السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم. A warm and heartfelt welcome to all our esteemed viewers and listeners tuning into Radio Al Ansar 90.4 FM in Durban, 105.6 FM in Pietermaritzburg, and we welcome our live viewers watching us live on Facebook and on YouTube from around the country and from around the world. The program is called Back to the Basics in the company of Maulana Muhammad Saleh Jusub Arbi Abu Saleh Al Qadri, and this program takes place every Tuesday between 1:30 and 2 p.m. and this program is dedicated to reconnecting and re-establishing our connection with the basic teachings of Islam, and we discuss anything based on the basic teachings of Islam so that we are inspired to strengthen our bond with the basic elements of our religion and to rectify our internal and external, inner and outer state, for us to be better Muslims, for us to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Over the last few weeks, we have been discussing some of the teachings, the basic teachings from the work of Bazullah al-Ashhab, Sultanul Awliya, Muhyiddin wa Muhyul Qulub, Sayyiduna Shaykh, our master and our Shaykh, As-Sayyid Abdul Qadir Al-Gilani, Qaddasallahu Sirrahul Aziz. And we have been discussing excerpts from Al-Fathur Rabbani, which means sublime openings, divine openings that are found and experienced through the words and the inspiration of Huzur Sayyidina Ghaus Azam Shaykh Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani Qaddasallahu Sirrahul Aziz. So in last week's program, we discussed a passage from the 12th discourse of Huzur Sayyidina Ghaus Pak radiyallahu ta'ala an. And just to inform and notify the listeners, Maulana Tabrez Nuri usually is my guest on the Wednesday programs called Be With the Beloved. Maulana joins me on Wednesdays, sometimes with his father, Maulana Abdul Majid Nuri, and we discuss kalams written by his father. And today we were at studio for something else, and Maulana was here, so I got hold of him and I prevented him from leaving. And I said, the live show is starting now. Maybe you should also join into the discussion. So Maulana, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's a pleasure to have you on this program as well. I think it's the first time you're featuring on Back to the Basics. You frequently feature on Be With the Beloved, but inshallah in today's discussion you will also join in and share your wisdom with us regarding the basic teachings of Islam. Maulana, the excerpt that we would like to discuss today from Sayyidina Shaykh, our Shaykh radiyallahu ta'ala an. Last week we discussed the 12th discourse, and in today's program we are discussing the start of the 9th discourse of Sayyidina Shaykh Abdul Qadir Al-Jilani radiyallahu an. So the 9th discourse goes like this. The compiler who compiled, and these are obviously discourses and lectures given by Huzur Ghaus Pak radiyallahu an. So somebody compiled and recorded these words that were said by Huzur Sayyidina Ghaus radiyallahu an. So the compiler says, it was in the schoolhouse in the early morning of Friday, the 22nd of Shawwal, in the year 545 AH, that the Shaykh, may Allah be well pleased with him, said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is reported as having said, Allah does not torment his loved one, but he may well put him to the test. We read that again. Allah does not torment his loved one, but he may well put him to the test. Now, last week I also mentioned that when it comes to the words of Huzur Ghaus Pak radiyallahu an, even though these words were said approximately almost 1,000 years ago. When we read these words, it seems as if Huzur Sayyidina Ghaus Azam radiallahu anhu is speaking to us today. So he brings firstly a hadith and he says, Allah does not torment his loved one, but he may well put him to the test. So if we look today, everybody is going through some sort of a test. Everybody is going through a challenge. There's nobody that can stand up and say that his life doesn't have any challenges or her life is totally problem-free. They don't face any difficulty at all. Everybody is facing a challenge. Now, it's important for us to be inspired at the fact that the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah does not torment his loved ones, but the ones that he loves, he puts them through a test. So if Allah is testing you, it's a sign that Allah loves you.
Subhanallah, Maulana.
Because Allah only tests the ones who he loves. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, from all the Anbiya, from all the prophets, the Prophet ﷺ said, I, Muhammad ﷺ, was the one that was tested the most. So what does this mean indirectly? If the Prophet ﷺ was tested the most, and Allah tests those who he loves, so if he tested the Prophet ﷺ the most, then it means that Allah loves his Prophet the most.
Subhanallah. So, Maulana Sahib, a very beautiful discourse of Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi. And what a beautiful nasiha and advice. Because firstly, I would think, Ya Sayyidi, that we all humans on this planet should accept and understand that this is a place of trials and tribulations, this dunya. If we can fathom this, that no one has come to make maza and enjoy in this dunya. This is a world filled with calamities. There's good, there's bad, there's day, there's night. It has opposites. And a person is bound to be afflicted by those calamities, which may ruin all the peace and happiness in your life. However, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in one hadith has also mentioned, "Man yuridillahu bihi khayran yusib minhu." If Allah Azza wa Jalla wills good for someone, he afflicts him with trials. This hadith is found in Sahih al-Bukhari as well, and in many other books of hadith. So when Allah Azza wa Jalla wills good for any of his bondsmen, then he Azza wa Jalla inflicts that particular person with trials and tribulations. And wallah, just as you mentioned, Ya Sayyidi, that the lives of the previous Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, yani the best of all humans that ever walked the face of this earth, the Anbiya alayhi salatu wasalam, that group of messengers of Allah Azza wa Jalla, they are the ones that face the most trials in the dunya, yet they are the best from amongst all the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what we learn is that always the best of people will be tested with difficulties and trials, tribulations in this dunya. So we see that there are people out there in the world who have not come out of this bubble of maybe perhaps losing a loved one in the family. Somebody's son passed away. Someone's only son or daughter passed away. Someone has lost the only sibling, for example. 5, 10, 15 years have passed and they still cannot get over that. And we understand, and we at the same time give condolences to such people, that it's not easy to work around and to get over something that you have loved so much in this dunya. But this is the whole idea of coming into this world, that Allah Kareem will test you, as he mentioned in the Holy Quran Pak. وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِّنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَالْأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ. So you will be tested with all of these things, with fear, min al-ju', with hunger, with fear, with hunger, with your wealth, with your children. For what? وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Only to see that from amongst you, who is the one who demonstrates most patience and sabr. Now, Ghaus Pak rahmatullahi ta'ala is that personality that he says himself. Hazrat Allama Abdul Wahab Ash-Shirani rahmatullahi ta'ala has mentioned in his tabaqat, he has included this. He says, Ghaus Pak says, in the early days, I encountered a spectrum of vast trials in my life. That sometimes he says I would fall to the ground and I would coil on the ground due to hunger. And at that time I would recall this verse, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. That verily with every difficulty there's ease. Indeed, verily with every difficulty there's ease. And I would attain tranquility and I would solace my heart. through this verse of the Holy Quran Pak, that there is difficulties in everything that we do in this dunya, but with that difficulty, Allah Azza wa Jalla is giving you surety that after this difficulty, there will be ease. And our Ghawth says he would attain tranquility from this verse.
Sayyidina Ghawth Pak radiallahu an in Al-Fath al-Rabbani is saying something so profound and saying something so beautiful on this theme.
Right.
So you can say the theme and the discussion that we are having today based on the basic teachings of Islam is how to handle trials and tribulations. Because everybody is facing a challenge. Everybody has some avenue of life where they're having it hard. Whether it's marital, whether it's incompatibility, they find themselves in a throttling situation. They no longer have an understanding or a mutual bond with their spouse. They don't want to leave the equation because now they are children. Then there are some people that are in financial distress. There are some people that cannot make it to pay the bills and meet their commitments at the end of the month. Some people are out of a job. Some people have family stress. Some people have marital stress. Some people have financial stress. A lot of people have different types of stress. And life is not easy. Right? And many a times people find themselves sinking into this depression because they cannot manage it. Right? Then they end up going for counseling. Then they end up going and taking treatment, antidepressants. Now, Sayyidina Ghawth Pak radiallahu an, Bazullah al-Ashhab Aba Salih radiallahu an says, the believer is secure in the knowledge that Allah will not make him experience something as a trial unless this will result in some benefit. This is solace.
Allahu Akbar.
This is encouragement. Sayyidina Ghawth, Abdul Qadir Jilani is encouraging people. And he is, in other words, saying, if you are going through a tough time, Allah is not going to make you experience a trial unless this will result in some benefit.
Allahu Akbar. So, Yani, the test itself, Ya Sayyidi, becomes an expiation for the sins of that person. The test itself becomes a reason for his sins to be pardoned and forgiven.
His sins being pardoned is one benefit. There can be a variety of benefits.
Subhanallah.
There can be a variety of benefits. His sins being washed away, his sins being expiated, his sins being washed away, him getting a reward for these trials and tribulations in the akhirah. This is one benefit. His darajat being raised because of the sabr that he made. This is another benefit. It makes him a stronger person because he comes across some painful, harsh realities in this life. The ones who he loves the most are the ones who hurt him the most. The friends who are the closest to him are the friends who betray him. He sees the reality and the true colors of people as his life unfolds. His trust is broken. He's betrayed. People are ungrateful to him for the things that he did. There's so many things that a person goes through that hurts him. It crushes him.
According to our plan, half the time, Ya Sayyidi.
Most of the time.
Most of the time, actually. You plan this and then you realize something else will stay in place.
Like the Arabs say, Anta turid wa ana urid wallahu yaf'alu ma yurid.
Allahu Akbar. You plan, we plan, but Allah is the best.
You want, I want, but Allah does what He wants. And eventually and ultimately, the plan of Allah is what prevails. Sayyidina Ghawth radiallahu an says, Allah will not make him experience something as a trial unless this trial will result in some benefit. He says, either for this world or for the hereafter.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Subhanallah.
The benefit that he's going to see from the difficulty that he's going through. Allah is one thing guaranteed, he's going to benefit from it. He's going to come out a stronger person. He's going to come out emotionally stronger, psychologically stronger. He's going to learn lessons. He's going to realize the reality of life. He's going to understand another chapter of life will be discovered. And then Sayyidina Ghawth Pak radiallahu anh says, this benefit that he's going to get out of the difficulty is either for this world or for the hereafter. Therefore, he accepts misfortune cheerfully. He accepts misfortune cheerfully. He bears it with patience
Yeah, but
and harbors no resentment against his Lord.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
And if he attains this, then his Lord keeps him distracted from the affliction, which means he faces the difficulty, but Allah will keep him distracted from that difficulty,
Yeah, but
which means he will be going through a challenge and Allah will make him forget that it's even a challenge. Maulana, you wanted to say something?
SubhanAllah. Just recalling, Ya Sayyidi, that how our pious predecessors were the embodiment of these matters that Maulana Sahib has just discussed. Yani, practicing and practically showing and demonstrating sabr and patience, perseverance over those trials. So what we understand is that when a person faces any trial in the dunya, from the teaching of Ghaus Pak Rahmatullah Ali, the first goodness instantly he attains when a trial comes in his life is that because of that trial is the reason and the sabab to take him closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Before that trial, he was heedless to the dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Because of that certain problem, he began waking up for tahajjud salah. The brother is found in the masjid for fajr salah, ba jamaat with takbir ula.
Allah, first saf.
First saf.
Before the muazzin.
Before the muazzin saf. It's because that trial has taken him to the house of Allah. Has pushed him. And subhanallah, because of the trial, he has drawn closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And secondly is that as a trial, subhanallah, because of that trial and that tribulation he's facing, his sins are then erased. So there's two benefits. I'm just thinking about how people instantly make sabr over the trial. And this is one thing that I find often, that, men out there, mashallah, I'm saying this with good intentions, that often men are very solution-driven people. They have a solution for everything. Sometimes a person faces trials and you just want to get that off your chest. You just want to vent. Sometimes Islamic sister wants to say something, maybe your wife wants to say something, and she just wants you to hear her out without any solutions. And the thing is, what I'm saying is that sabr and patience to demonstrate that over a trial is very important. As-sabru inda sadmatil ula. That sabr is in the very first instant. When any calamity, any musibah strikes, a person should demonstrate sabr and patience. Like Hazrat Fuzail bin Ayaz rahmatullahi ta'ala ali. What a great wali. His son has passed away, Ali bin Ayaz rahmatullah ali. People found him smiling during the janazah of his son. Yani he had no traces of sadness on his face.
Allah.
And someone asked him, Ya Sayyidi, aapke bete ka intiqal hua? Your son has passed on and we see that there is no sadness upon your face. For which he says that I am happy with the decree of Allah Azza wa Jalla. I am satisfied and happy with what Allah has decided for my son. By me crying will show that I am in disagreement with the hukum and with the law of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Allah Azza wa Jalla has decreed for this to happen. My son is gone. So I do not want to shed tears to show that I am in disagreement with what Allah has willed to happen.
Allah.
And many awliyas like that, they have said that by us crying will mean that the thawab and the reward for having sabr and patience has kept us far away from crying about the problem itself. So why should I cry about the problem when the reward is so immense? Just a summary of the reward, it is stated that on the day of judgment, when Allah Kareem will reward those who had patience over trials and tribulations in the dunya, when they will be rewarded on the day of judgment, then those who did not have sabr and patience in the world, they became very impatient people. They will wish and desire that we can be sent back to the world and take a scissor or knife and cut and rip our bodies so that we can be given the same reward which the sabirin will be given on the day of judgment. So the rewards are immense to motivate us to be people of patience, so that in exchange of that trial, we can get that on the day of judgment. I'm just trying to make minds, because it's easy to say have sabr. Because a lot of people you will find, Ya Sayyidi, they will be saying, but hum insan hai, Allah knows our weakness. Our weakness is to complain. Our weakness is to demonstrate or to say to the people what we're facing in our lives. They feel that we have to keep on talking about our problems, but keep on speaking about the problem will actually make a person lose that reward which Allah has prepared for him. For example, losing your son. One hadith states that when a person loses his son, Allah Azza wa Jalla asks the angels, have you extracted the soul of my bondsman's son? The angels say yes. Have you plucked the fruit of his heart? The angels say yes. Then Allah Azza wa Jalla asks the angel, then what did my banda say when he lost his son or his child, his awlad? The angels say, Hamidaka wastarja'a. Ya Allah Azza wa Jalla, he praised you. Then Allah Azza wa Jalla then commands the angels, he praised me when my son passed away. Yani he said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Or he glorified Allah Azza wa Jalla. Then Allah Kareem commands the angel, make for him a palace in Jannah and name it Baytul Hamd. This is for that banda who praised me during that difficult moment.
Alhamdulillah.
So from the teachings of Ghaus Pak Rahmatullahi Ta'ala Ali, we learn, Ya Sayyidi, that we have this every day in our life that we can demonstrate and practice sabr and perseverance over trials and tribulations, but we lose that opportunity because we have become people who always want to announce what we are facing in a day, what trials and tribulations we are going through in our day. One conversation we have with the person, we just want someone to trigger us so that we can narrate the entire story as to kya hua, kya nahi hua. Sometimes it's beneficial, sometimes it makes a person lose that reward which Allah has prepared for him, because remember, not every banda on the day of judgment will reach into paradise based on his amal and actions. So Allah makes a person face trials and tribulations in the dunya, so that through that sabr that he will have because of that trial, Allah will make him reach that maqam in Jannah, which he deserved, but his amal and his actions could not take him there. So Allah Azza wa Jalla makes him suffer trials and tribulations in the dunya. So Ghaus Pak Rahmatullahi Ta'ala, who better than him, the crown of the awliya, the crown of our head, subhanallah, is the one who faced so much of difficulties in this dunya from a little age, and yet subhanallah, look at his sabr and perseverance, look at his patience. He would sometimes survive on the fruits and the vegetables or the leaves of the trees from the jungles just to keep himself satiated and keep himself going, but he will be engrossed in the dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jalla. As he says that he would draw tranquility from this verse, that after every difficulty there's ease, and this is what we as the followers of Sarkari Ghaus Pak Rahmatullahi Ta'ala Ali need to accept, that leave everything to Allah. وَأُفَوِّضُ أَمْرِي إِلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ بَصِيرٌ بِالْعِبَادِ. Allah Azza wa Jalla says everything, and especially his bandas. Hand over your affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Maulana Sahib, Jazakallah so much for your words of inspiration. You've really added a lot of value to today's discussion, and it's been very inspirational. You've made a lot of minds, and you've given people and reminded them that they need to adopt the inspiration and strength to handle their affairs. And Jazakumullahu khairan. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Allah bless you and reward you. Thank you, Ted. And until we speak to you again, Jazakumullahu khairan. Signing off. Ma'as-salam wa assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Gift of the Needy team is working hands-on in Gaza to distribute aid in this time of crisis. Donate your zakah now to our brothers and sisters in Palestine who are in dire need. Standard Bank, Gift of the Needy account 272327654. Donate online on www.giftoftheneedy.com. Call us on 03127131102. Gift of the Needy, bringing ease to those in need.
Radio Al Ansar. An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News.
Making news this are the 28th of October. The news from Durban 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg, 105.6 FM. KwaZulu-Natal Speaker urges building safety reviews following Durban lift tragedy, America Monina. The Speaker of the KwaZulu-Natal Legislature has called for closer collaboration between the government and municipalities to review building safety compliance. This follows a march that brought Durban CBD to a standstill yesterday, protesting the tragic fall of 8-year-old twins down a lift shaft at their block of flats. The boy Apele Dlamini died while his sister Apile remains in hospital. The Speaker, Nontobergo Boise, says that the tragedy highlights the urgent need for consistent, fair and transparent oversight of all residential buildings in the Durban Metro. Boise has urged the Department of Public Works and eThekwini Municipality to urgently work together to review safety compliance in all buildings to prevent similar incidents. The Speaker has also called on other government departments, councillors, and the private sector to ensure safety audits and corrective measures are carried out, especially in older and repurposed buildings. Boise has also says that the government's response must go beyond condolences because communities expect solutions. More news. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA, has commended the Labour Court ruling as a significant victory for workers in northern KwaZulu-Natal. ArcelorMittal South Africa has been ordered to reinstate workers who were unfairly retrenched at its Newcastle plant and in Vereeniging. NUMSA took the steel company to court on an urgent basis earlier this month, accusing it of ignoring consultation requirements before deciding to close the two operations. The union argued the production giant had walked away from talks on retrenchments in March, even as new developments around possible government support and a takeover deal were unfolding. The court found that the steel manufacturer, ArcelorMittal, failed to follow proper consultation procedures before cutting jobs last week. The court has ruled that ArcelorMittal must reopen talks with NUMSA within 10 days. The union's Pagamile Hlubi Majola says that the judgment offers hope that alternatives to job losses can still be explored. More news. The Johannesburg High Court has agreed with the magistrate court that the alleged crime boss, Vusi Muzi Kat Matlala, is a flight risk. The High Court handed down a judgment yesterday dismissing Matlala's bail appeal. Matlala escalated his bid for bail to the High Court after the Alexandra Magistrate Court ruled that he was not eligible for bail. He is accused of ordering a hit on his socialite girlfriend, Tobeko Tobajani, in 2023. One of the factors considered by the Alexandra Magistrate Court in denying Matlala bail was that he has an Eswatini ID and he has foreign financial interest. It was revealed that he has a trust account in Mauritius. National Prosecuting Authority spokesperson Pindim Jededwana weighs in.
We are of the view that the court made the right decision in denying Mr. Matlala bail, considering the severity of the charges and the risk to public safety, as well as law enforcement officers, including the investigating officer and the prosecutors involved in this matter.
Back here in KwaZulu-Natal, the South African Police Service has launched an accountability drive aimed at improving the province's crime detection and conviction rates. The acting Deputy Provincial Commissioner for Crime Detection, Major General Anthony Gopal, convened an accountability session yesterday to bring together all branch commanders and heads of detective units across KwaZulu-Natal. The session was held in Mayville, focusing on evaluating investigative progress and also ensuring detectives are held accountable for the dockets they handle. General Gopal says the initiative forms part of the police's broader efforts to strengthen investigations, improve the quality of case outcomes, and also restore public confidence in policing. Your financial indicators ran to the dollar 17 rands 26, the euro 20 rands 12 cents, and the British pound is 22 rands 96 cents. Your weather 24 degrees. A quick reminder of our top story: the Speaker of the KwaZulu-Natal Legislature has called for closer collaboration between government and municipalities to review building safety compliance. This follows a Durban lift tragedy. That's the news. We cross over to Pietermaritzburg.
Making news on the 6th of Jamad al-Ula, corresponding with the 28th of October on 105.6 FM in Pietermaritzburg. A ladies' program will take place today from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. And in labor news, the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa have been welcomed. Good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum. I am Huda Ahmed. In local news, a ladies' program will take place today from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. at 477 Prince Alfred Street, the residence of Maulana Metha. The guest speaker will be Haji Dawood Marchi. Inshallah, all ladies are encouraged to attend and benefit from this uplifting session. In labor news, the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa has welcomed a labor court ruling ordering ArcelorMittal South Africa to reinstate all workers dismissed earlier this month. The affected employees from Newcastle Works plants were retrenched on the 21st of October 2025, but the court found the process to be unfair. NUMSA described the decision as a major victory for workers' rights and accountability in corporate labor practices. And now moving on to national news, the Democratic Alliance has appealed to the economic freedom fighters to support its motion of no confidence in Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi. The motion follows ongoing criticism of the province's governance, including allegations of mismanagement and inefficiency in service delivery. Political analysts say the motion will test coalition alliances within the provincial legislation. Meanwhile, a report by the Gauteng Department of Infrastructure Development has raised serious concerns over the structural safety of schools in the province. Nearly 95% of Gauteng schools have missed mandatory 5-year building inspections, leaving the government without full knowledge of their condition. The department has pledged to fast-track assessments to ensure the safety of learners and staff. In Limpopo, a 20-year-old man has been sentenced to 7 life terms for the rape of 3 minor girls. The regional court also imposed an additional 15 years of robbery with aggravated circumstances. The National Prosecuting Authority welcomed the sentence, describing it as a reflection of the justice system's commitment to protecting vulnerable children from violent crimes. And finally, in international news, in Brazil, former President Jair Bolsonaro has filed an appeal against his 27 prison sentence for attempting to stage a military coup after losing the 2022 election. His legal team submitted a 85-page motion to the Supreme Court seeking a review of the conviction and sentence. The case continues to divide Brazil's politically as Bolsonaro maintains his innocence and claims the charges are politically motivated. And now let's take a look at our Salah schedule for today, followed by our Islamic indicators and temperatures across the region. Asr Salah commences at 4:24, Maghrib Salah commences at 6:23, Isha Salah commences at 7:30. And now moving on to our Durban times. Asr Salah commences at 4:22, Maghrib Salah commences at 6:21, Isha Salah commences at 7:44. And now moving on to our Islamic indicators. Zakat Nisab is 17,880 Rand. Meher Fatimi is 44,684 Rand. And the minimum meher is 885 Rand. And now taking a look at temperatures. Pietermaritzburg 6 to a high of 25. Newcastle 9 to a high of 22. And Escort 5 to a high of 25. For Ansar News, this is Huda Ahmed.
The names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is proudly brought to you by Turkiya, the Modest Boutique, 580 Ridge Road, Demure Couture for the discerning.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Hadi. He is the one who guides. And this name reminds us that we are in need of guidance every moment of our lives. And that's why your most constant prayer and mine is Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Guide us the straight path. It teaches us that we would not be guided if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not guide us. And it is an incredible gift that we should ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant for others. And it is something that even the prophets would ask for. And we don't have time to get into all of the verses, but the greatest of them, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, used to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-huda wal-tuqa wal-afafa wal-ghina. I ask you for guidance and taqwa and self-sufficiency and independence. And so asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for guidance and asking Allah for guidance for others, especially in these last 10 nights. The people that you love, ask Allah to guide.
The names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is proudly brought to you by Turkiya, the Modest Boutique, 580 Ridge Road, Demure Couture for the discerning.
Turkiya brings to you the Modest Boutique, where elegance meets style and exclusivity meets you. Come in and view our personally handpicked range of exceptional quality garments for every occasion, from timeless classics to the latest trends in a range of fabrics to suit your taste. Abayas, top coats, dresses, scarves, and accessories. Let us bring out the diva in you. We offer you a truly relaxing shopping experience, secure on-site parking, open 7 days a week. Follow us on Instagram at Turkiya_Durban or call 083-786-1065. Turkiya, Demure Couture for the discerning, 580 Ridge Road.
Are you ready for an unforgettable adventure in the heart of South Africa? Look no further than Quantu Private Game Reserve. Introducing our exclusive South African special, a day visit for only 850 Rand per person, and children under 10 pay half price. Endure the ultimate safari experience with a 5-course meal, a thrilling game drive showcasing the Big Five, and a visit to our Predator Education and Rehabilitation Center. Plus, enjoy a hot snack and so much more. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to connect with nature and create lifelong memories. Book your day visit today by calling 081 434 8859. That's 081 434 8859. Kwantu Private Game Reserve, where the wild heart of South Africa beats. Book now and experience the adventure of a lifetime.
Sunnah a Day, proudly brought to you by Sunpick, 100% pure sunflower cooking oil. Sunpick, cook more with less.
Sunnah a Day. If someone arrives while one is eating, it is sunnah to invite him to join in the meal.
Sunnah a Day, proudly brought to you by Sunpick, 100% pure sunflower cooking oil. Sunpick, cook more with less.
Imagine this. You're putting together a 7-color meal, from the creamy pasta to the glazed carrots and flavorful onion gravy. This entire meal is made with our 100% pure extra virgin olive oil from our La Familia range, bringing outstanding quality and taste to your kitchen. Shop La Familia 100% pure extra virgin olive oil at any leading supermarkets near you. La Familia, heart of the home.
The views and opinions expressed by the presenters and guests of Radio Al Ansar are not necessarily the views and opinions of Radio Al Ansar and the Al Ansar Foundation.
This is the weekly debriefing, where headlines meet hard truth. I am Muhammad Iyas Kareem, so join me every Tuesday at 2 p.m. on Radio Al Ansar for sharp analysis, global context, and local relevance. From geopolitics to breaking news back home, we'll bring in the journalists, the commentators, and the stories behind the spin. Stay informed, stay ahead. The weekly debriefing, Tuesdays 2 to 3 p.m.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the weekly debrief. My name is Muhammad Iyas Kareem, and this is the show where I try to peel back the veneer to expose what's really happening beneath the headlines. So this week, South Africa has taken steps and stumbled into new terrain, from grey listing exits to fanfare to infrastructure fault lines still screaming for attention. Meanwhile, the global landscape is growing harsher. Energy empires are shifting gears, and smaller nations are increasingly squeezed by big power gambits. And across all these stories, we can ask, are we just responding or simply just reacting? So later in the show, we'll be joined by Aisha Kaji to help me understand what I have been noticing recently, which is the rise of dictatorships all across Africa and, of course, the United States. But right now, let's get into our first interview. So water, the one thing that every South African is guaranteed on paper, but not in reality. In KwaZulu-Natal, thousands of residents go weeks, days, even years without a reliable supply. Some Durban communities have been told that they might have to wait up to 7 years before running water reaches their taps. It is a crisis that has been building drop by drop, a mix of collapsing infrastructure, government neglect, and a changing climate that makes scarcity the new normal. So joining us now is Nhlanhla Sibisi, Water Justice Campaigner and former coordinator for WaterCan, somebody who spent years tracking these failures and fighting for fair, sustainable access to one of life's most basic needs. Good afternoon, Nhlanhla, and thank you so much for joining me.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me, Mohammed.
KwaZulu-Natal is facing a water crisis that's no longer just about inconvenience, right? In Durban, some residents have been told that they have to wait up to 7 years. Can you help listeners understand how severe the situation really is and why certain communities are still left waiting for years for something as basic as water?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So if we look at the current crisis that we're seeing in the different suburbs, it's actually a combination of issues. One, you can say it's the historical issue, which has to do with the repair of infrastructure. Some areas, unfortunately, have been neglected in terms of upgrading the infrastructure for a while. And this realization has actually rather come too late from a local government planning perspective, if you look at it from that, because they've had the warning signs. Research has actually shown that infrastructure over time will have to be maintained and would also have to be completely replaced. So that's one aspect that we can look at in terms of why in some areas there's water shortages because of the burst pipes, for example. And also to mention that, if you look at the recent climate events, or what we mostly refer to as climate change, has also had an impact because we've seen areas, especially in the past couple of years, where we've had heavy rainfall. and infrastructure being wiped out or being damaged. And you find that it has also been taking a while to actually get that infrastructure back on course as a result of the funding models that some municipalities have, including the one of eThekwini.
You know, eThekwini recently, they reported significant reduction in water loss thanks to this NRW reduction strategy. But we know that the leaks and the burst pipes and the aging infrastructure is still plaguing many areas, like you just explained. I mean, how much of a difference do these strategies really make? And why is so much water still being lost? I mean, if you look at the numbers, they are kind of staggering with regards to just how much we lose from leaks.
Yeah. So in terms of a systemic approach, that is what has been lacking when you're referring to the strategies that the government has to put in place, because the strategies have to take into consideration the lifespan or the life cycle actually of any water system, and by when should it be maintained, by when should it be replaced, as well as to by when it should be upgraded. And that has been a very systematic failure in the sense that the municipality has not been keeping up with it. And if you challenge a municipality on these issues, they've been talking about funding, that there's a lack of funding when it comes to taking care of these issues, as well as capacity. And we know for a fact that some municipalities, including eThekwini, has lost quite a lot of engineers in terms of, people aging and leaving the system, but not having enough replacement. And there's a recent study that actually had shown that in terms of the water engineers that we have in the country, not only in eThekwini, we're actually not producing enough of engineers to put back into the system with the current engineers that are now leaving the system. So that's also a systemic failure. But the funding part that I actually just wanted to focus on is that municipalities also have not been prioritizing, as I was mentioning earlier on, has not been prioritizing in keeping up with upgrading and maintenance. And that is also another systemic failure.
I think that's the core of the majority of the problems that we face across all our state-owned enterprises, which is honestly, it's frustrating because there really shouldn't be a shortage of funds if you consider the amount of corruption that's been exposed. But look, I mean, in the midst of this crisis, communities are now trying to get creative. I mean, some households are harvesting rainwater and local groups are building small-scale water systems to survive. How do you think that these grassroots systems, do they have potential to provide meaningful relief, or are they just temporary fixes in a system that is fundamentally broken?
Yeah. To start with, let me just address the issue on the funding. We at WaterCan have actually done our research around this, and we've seen how corruption is actually being a major problem in terms of the funding, because of what we refer to as the water mafia. Why we call them the water mafia? Because we find that in some areas where there should be proper maintenance, etc., you find tankers coming in, and there are people who are actually benefiting from that, and these are private people actually benefiting from that. But it's not doing any justice to the communities. In terms of what grassroots organizations are doing and making an impact on is, yes, to definitely hold local government accountable, also at provincial and at national. And the grassroots organizations, including like WaterCan, we're working on actually engaging communities to form what we refer to as the water committees or water crisis committees, where they can actually put their demands in a collective way and get government to actually, and this in this case with local government, get local government to act on all of these inefficiencies that we are seeing plaguing the water system. So civil society has a voice, and civil society also has to keep up those demands that they've been putting across, because that's the way of reaching out to communities and getting communities to also take these initiatives that you are referring to, because there are communities who are harvesting water, but the challenge is
it's not feasible long term. Realistically, it shouldn't have to be a solution, right? But
no, it should not.
Government recently introduced these two bills which are aimed at addressing the water crisis, including changes to water services and national water management. Look, from your perspective, are these legislative measures likely to address the structural problems, or are they, which you see more often than not, just for the sake of appearance?
Yeah. So one of the challenges that were highlighted by the Department of Water and Sanitation that's at national level was that they did not have the mandate, nor did they have the legislative framework to actually intervene when a municipality is failing. So part of that framework speaks to those two policy documents that you've referred to. One of them is actually getting the national government to actually intervene at a local level where they can not necessarily take over government, but be able to assist them in terms of speeding up their infrastructure repairs, but also making sure that there's access, to communities when it comes to water. And we actually appreciate that, because then all these levels of government can start working together rather than one level saying that, no, but we don't have the powers, and the other says that we don't have enough, resources, and we need those resources. So we're hoping that that will be one of the solutions that will actually help out. But in the long term, the municipalities also need to get their act together in terms of making sure that there's no corruption, they're well capacitated, and they follow through on their own maintenance plans that they have. It's not like they don't have them.
It's interesting that you say that, because a real point of contention for me is like when I hear the minister, Phemi Majidien, say things like, this is not my fault or my responsibility, this is at a municipal level, and which is like, okay, valid, right? That may be the case, but you're the minister, right? It's frustrating. But look, I think beyond the bureaucracy, we need to understand that water scarcity doesn't just inconvenience households, it threatens businesses, public health, the economy, and unreliable water supply can ripple through every aspect of daily life. What are some of the social and economic consequences that ordinary South Africans need to be prepared for if the crisis deepens?
Absolutely. So one of the things is to continue the demands, making demands to local government as well as national government, and talking about the intervention. The intervention of national government. Yes, you're absolutely right, because we've had a crisis before. For example, if you look at how we handled the crisis that is referred to as Day Zero in Cape Town and the surrounding areas. There was a national initiative that was taken to make sure that, that the industries that are in the Cape Town area does not get impacted, as you rightfully said, because it does lead to some companies closing down. Small businesses, especially, they get more impacted, and people lose their jobs. So yes, we also believe that national government should be playing a very upfront role in terms of addressing these challenges. So that needs to continue to happen, because if Day Zero was actually averted, we should not be having any Day Zeros in any other places, because we were able to do that from a national scale to a local scale.
Definitely. Look, I think it's also important to understand that South Africa's changing climate patterns are making supply even less predictable. Droughts are becoming more frequent and severe, and it's added a real pressure. Sometimes I wonder if this is a lot of fear-mongering or pseudoscience, and I am not educated enough to really come to a conclusion, right? So I'm curious, with regards to your perspective, with climate change and the unpredictable patterns shaping this crisis, do you think that they are that impactful, and are there any long-term strategies that need to be now put into place?
To start with, climate change is real, and I know that some people believe that no, it's not really, and as you alluded, it's pseudoscience, etc. But climate change is real, and we've been seeing from climate change reports that have been actually showing. And unfortunately for the East Coast, which is where the eThekwini municipality is based, we have the opposite of all of these extreme weather events. Instead of having droughts, we have more floods, and those floods actually is what I referred to earlier on as actually damaging the infrastructure that we have. So in terms of having early warning systems, that's one of the things that a lot of climate scientists have been actually putting out to governments, not only in South Africa, but across the globe, in terms of saying that where areas are prone to floods or droughts, depending, there are early warning systems that can be put in place, and certain measures that can be put in place to actually avert that and adapt to those changing weather patterns. And it's a reality with the Durban area, especially, where we've seen a lot of floods. Over the years, they're becoming more and more extreme, they're becoming more and more frequent, and that is damaging the infrastructure that we refer to. So yes, the national government as well, to actually come back home, is that they have these early warning systems. The problem is that I don't think that there's a proper coordination that's happening between the national and the local level, and that's where the impacts are felt. So that should be improved.
And I think also effective disaster relief management. Look, we've got 2 minutes left. I'm just curious. I think that it's important to touch on this point in closing. We recently saw this huge expose in Pretoria with regards to the 717 million rand tender scandal, right?
Yes.
And these tanker mafias are becoming prevalent wherever there is a shortage. What is your advice with regards to how people should respond when they have no option? I mean, you're in a situation where you need the water, so you're eventually going to end up purchasing from the person, even though you know that they are rightfully exploiting you. So what do we do?
So what we need is transparency. Just to give you a latest example, Watercan is actually sending out letters to all of the major metros demanding, one, that they make transparent who the people or the companies that have been given the tender to provide water tankers, and what is their budget. Two, what is their budget as the municipality to cater for that? And why is it become such a necessity that we go that route? Because that's a short-term route and it's not a sustainable route. And also what we're demanding is that for local government to be transparent in all of these demands that we're making so that the communities are aware. Because what we want to do, we want that to be taken out to the communities. Even if the local government doesn't want to do it, we as a civil society are actually more than willing to do that so that there's transparency, and then the local councillors can also be held accountable to actually say that why are they allowing all the budget that they've allocated for these tenders to go to short-term measures as opposed to going to long-term measures where we have continuous maintenance, where we do proper upgrades, etc. But at the end of the day, to answer your question concretely, Mohammed, is to say that we need transparency in communities. In every given local municipality, we must have that printed and shared with communities.
Definitely. Look, I think we know the answer to that question with regards to why, but I think the reality is stark, right? Water shortages are worsening, livelihoods, and public health is at risk, and we need to be more informed and more proactive. But look, that is our time. Thank you so much, Ndahla, for joining us. It really was insightful, and we look forward to chatting to you again.
Thank you very much, Mohammed, for inviting me, and thank you to the listeners for listening as well.
It is our pleasure. So that was an eye-opening conversation, but we're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to get into the more global aspect of the show. Stay right there.
Are you ready for an unforgettable adventure in the heart of South Africa? Look no further than Kwantu Private Game Reserve, introducing our exclusive South African special, a day visit for only 850 Rand per person, and children under 10 pay half price. Endure the ultimate safari experience with a 5-course meal, a thrilling game drive showcasing the Big Five, and a visit to our Predator Education and Rehabilitation Center. Plus, enjoy a hot snack and so much more. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to connect with nature and create lifelong memories. Book your day visit today by calling 081 434 8859. That's 081 434 8859. Kwantu Private Game Reserve, where the wild heart of South Africa beats. Book now and experience the adventure of a lifetime.
This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport.
Kenfield Auto. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين.
Car won't start?
Kenfield Auto.
Noisy brakes?
Kenfield Auto.
Due for a service?
Kenfield Auto.
Kenfield Auto, the answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Kenfield Auto, your RMI and insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031 207 2399. Kenfield Auto.
It's Checkstar's 11th birthday and you could be driving away in style. Spend just 350 Rand or more and stand a chance to win one of 3 brand new Hafal Journey Pro SUVs. Don't miss your chance. Shop now, save big, and you could be our lucky winner. T's and C's apply. Checkstar really cares.
Elevate your style with Almol kurtas and fragrances from Potent Eyes Perfumes, exclusively available at Al Ansar Shop. Visit us at 207 West Road or call 031-208-1601. Experience the best in fashion and perfumery. Al Ansar Shop where elegance meets fragrance.
You're listening to your weekly debrief with Muhammad Iyaz Karim.
Assalamu alaikum. If you're just joining us, you're listening to the weekly debrief here on Radio Al Ansar. So let's get into some of the headlines dominating today. Firstly, South Africa has just approved a twice-a-year HIV prevention injection, a major scientific milestone and the first of its kind on the continent. It's being hailed as a game changer, but the real test will be in affordability, the rollout, and whether the health system can actually deliver beyond this headline. We're also taking this electric car thing more seriously. Government and industry leaders have launched the e-mobility energy drive, which is essentially to push electric vehicles nationwide. I mean, the vision sounds progressive, but questions are still lingering about the infrastructure, charging stations, and I mean, whether ordinary South Africans can even be part of this transition, because let's be so for real, the cost is staggering. And then on the international front, Hurricane Melissa, a Category 5 monster, has battered Jamaica with record-breaking winds and flooding, described as the worst storm in the island's history. It's another brutal reminder that for many nations, climate change isn't just a policy debate, right? But it's a lived disaster. Then over to Russia. Russian oil giant Lukoil has announced plans to sell off its international assets in the wake of ongoing Western sanctions. So this move is marking a seismic shift in this global energy politics. And I think the ripple effects of the war, the sanctions, and the economic pressure is continuing to redraw the maps of the world. And then finally, a new telecoms report revealed that while mobile networks are expanding in South Africa, fiber connectivity is falling dangerously far behind. So in a country where digital access is defining opportunity now, South Africa's broadband lag is more than just a tech issue. It's really becoming a question of economic justice. But yeah, that's just a few of the things that are dominating the headlines today. But now it's time to get into the second part of our show. So everywhere we look, the masks are slipping. Presidents who have promised democracy are now rewriting constitutions. Reformers are turning into rulers, and the ballot box, once a symbol of power for the people, is being recorded into a tool for control, right? Across Africa and even the West, we're seeing this disturbing pattern: elections that feel choreographed, opposition silence before campaigns, citizens learning that free and fair no longer means what it used to. And it's happening all across the continent and now the world. Even in the United States, Donald Trump has publicly said he would love a third term, which is literally against the Constitution of America. So to help me unpack this global drift towards the authoritarian and what it means for societies and who once really prided themselves on freedom, I'm joined by Aisha Kaji, a geopolitical analyst and commentator and long-term observer of government and democratic movements all across Africa. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakallah so much for joining me. Okay.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me on the show.
Always a pleasure. So look, let's start with the Ivory Coast, right? Wait, So sorry, can you hear me? Still there?
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay,
yes.
Okay, great. Yes, I said let's start with the Ivory Coast. Alassane Ouattara has just secured nearly 90% of the vote in an election where the key opponents were disqualified, right? And the results were essentially kind of predetermined. What does this really tell us about this illusion of choice in so-called democratic states?
Well, it basically, for me, it signals a return to an authoritarian form of government. I also do think that many of our citizens across the continent, unfortunately, are still very tied into big man politics. So, they look at popular, charismatic figures as being appropriate presidential candidates. And Ouattara somewhat fits this mold. He came to power as a very popular president after the downfall of his predecessor, Laurent Gbagbo, who actually wanted to contest these elections but was disqualified on the basis that he had, corruption charges against him. He was actually once even brought to the International Criminal Court, which is, not an easy thing to do because the court is a highly independent UN body. And those charges
against him. If you're African, it's a lot easier.
No, certainly easier if you're African, but still, it's an independent body in the sense that, it doesn't rely on the country's own judiciary, and it only investigates really serious allegations against members of government, sitting heads of state, etc., in the realm of war crimes, crimes against humanity, apartheid, genocide, etc. So the charges against the former president were dismissed, but he did try to contest these elections and he was disqualified. So too was another rival contender on the basis that he had held dual citizenship, French citizenship as well as Ivorian citizenship, and that he only renounced his French citizenship too late to actually be considered for these elections. So I think there is a sense of frustration amongst young Ivorians, particularly. Firstly, that Mr. Ouattara is contesting another term, but also that more popular figures have not been allowed to contest, and therefore it's essentially been a one-horse race all the way, culminating, as you said, in an almost 90% landslide type victory, but also bearing in mind that only about 50% of the electorate, of the eligible voters, came out to vote.
Yeah. I think that point that you made now with regards to popular figures, it can't be more apparent than in this case of Cameroon, right? Paul Biya was re-elected, but this is what is driving me insane. He was re-elected at 92. He's been in power for 4 decades, right?
Mm-hmm.
This level of political longevity is almost unheard of. But what does it say about the region's tolerance for entrenched rulers? Are the voters complicit, coerced, or simply unconcerned?
I think largely coerced, not complicit, and certainly among younger voters, very, very concerned. Who would actually want an almost, 100-year-old president, really? And Mr. Biya spends most of his time in Switzerland anyway, in a clinic in Switzerland, leaving other senior members of his government and indeed even family members to govern. Yet his presidency has been supported internally by many and also from the outside. He's got backers from the outside. He's got backers amongst big business in Cameroon, etc. And so he remains in power despite the frustrations and protests. There were some deadly protests actually this last week, which continued into the night yesterday in the capital, Douala, and which were quite violently suppressed. The army and the police were called out, and they used live ammunition on some of the protesters. So there's certainly a very close nexus between business, the military complex, and then international interests in Cameroon, which basically helped to secure Mr. Biya's 4th term and helped to suppress the protests of those who are frustrated by the ludicrous vision of having such an old president, frankly.
Sure. Yeah. I just remember the backlash that Joe Biden received, which I think was absolutely valid. But this 92, come on, man. It's like most people would be fortunate if they would ever see 92. But look, in Tanzania, the situation is similar, but also a little bit more disappointing because Samia Hassan was once hailed as a reformer, right? Where she would heal the division and open up the political space after her predecessor. But now we are looking at these allegations of rigged voter rolls, intimidation, and apparently it's a lot more conniving and it's just done a lot more surgically, right? And it suggests that the script really hasn't changed. Maybe it's just being hidden better. And that promise of reform has now just been weaponized as another form of control. What do you think?
Yes, certainly. Samia came to power as kind of, when she came to power after the death of John Magufuli, who actually was widely regarded, despite his authoritarian tendencies, he was widely regarded as having been very hard on corruption, tough on corruption, etc. But perhaps quite eccentric in his views on things like the coronavirus epidemic and how to prevent, COVID-19, etc. He had some controversial views on that. And when he passed away, Ms. Hassan took over as president. So she basically, walked into the presidency, but she was very, very popular at the time. And she has squandered a lot of that popularity because she hasn't actually delivered on her promises of reform, including electoral reform, of course. But she promised, wide-scale reform within government, and she has failed to deliver on that. And in recent months and even recent years, she has followed the kind of, she's a woman, but the kind of big man, bully boy tactics that so many African leaders and indeed other authoritarian leaders across the world, including Mr. Trump, you mentioned him before. She's followed these bullying tactics and silenced her critics both in opposition parties and even within her own party. Critics point to the disappearance of a prominent member of her own party who dared to criticize her. And it's really quite disappointing because there was so much potential for her to really change the trajectory of Tanzanian politics and even, the hold on power by her party, the CCM, which is wildly popular in Tanzania, particularly in the neighboring island of Zanzibar, which is where she hails from, and, where she's extremely popular even up until today. She's, revered as Mama Samia. So as one analyst commented recently, this particular election feels less like an election, like a multi-party, multi-candidate election, but more like a coronation.
Coronation, that's the word, yeah.
For Samia Hassan, yes.
Yeah. It's beyond, it's more than concerning, it's nefarious, right? I mean, the allegations of abductions and kidnappings of political opponents is rife. There's so much that you can't help but question that there must be some truth to this. But look, let's pivot to the United States. Trump recently mused that he would love a third term, and this has been the opinion of a lot of critics since he got into power. Many have dismissed it as rhetoric, but given this global pattern, I mean, I feel like this is something that needs to be taken more seriously. Are we watching Western democracy test the elasticity of its own guardrails?
I think so. I think certainly North America has moved very far right. Both within the Republican Party, but also to some extent, even amongst Democrats on certain issues, and issues such as migration, issues such as xenophobia, issues such as Islamophobia have become, and of course, the support for Israel, the kind of Christian Zionism that we see across the United States. All of these things signal a shift within American society towards a kind of fan base or electoral base, if you will, for people like Mr. Trump, who exemplify the big man politics that I was talking about that was so prevalent in Africa over the last few decades, but which is certainly making a comeback in the United States. And again, similarly to what we're seeing in Tanzania right now, where, the previous president Magufuli refused to take orders from this influential nexus of business tycoons and other, backers of the political party, which is colloquially known in Tanzania as Mtandao. Now we've got exactly the same kind of nexus of business, political, and military industrial complex backers, for Trump, who are essentially running his campaigns and then running his presidency to a large extent. Now, while he's kind of said he'd love a third term, the Section 22 of the U.S. Amendment 22 to the U.S. Constitution literally bars him from doing that. But his former backer, bankroller, and associate, and still close associate, Steve Bannon, said publicly last week not to rule out a third term for Trump, because there is a plan in place to make that happen. Trump has said he wouldn't run for VP, which is what some people were postulating, but he certainly hasn't ruled out the possibility of a third term. So it's very obvious he doesn't want to be the vice president. He wants to be top dog, but how he's going to get there, given the constitution of the U.S., remains to be seen, and whether the U.S., which has had a proud tradition overall of not amending its constitution for superficial reasons, whether that will give way in view of the neo-authoritarianism we see in the US and in other societies across the globe.
Do you know, I think he's done such an effective job in crumbling all three sectors of American government that it's almost inevitable that he's going to reach the point where he will be able to rewrite that constitution and essentially do it legally, in inverted commas, right?
It's going to be a difficult one, because currently to change that amendment, he's going to need, at least a 2/3 majority in both houses of government, both the Senate and Congress. But then he's also going to need a sort of multi-state backing, which is going to be difficult to achieve, despite the widespread pro-Trump sentiment. And as I said, then the move to the right in the US. So I don't think it's going to be easy as his backers envisage. But let's see what they come up with, and let's see what happens. And given certainly that there's huge amounts of money, including huge amounts of Zionist money, both Jewish Zionist and Christian Zionist behind Trump, never say never. It could happen, unfortunately.
Never say never. Yeah. Yes. You know, I think a lot of people have pointed out how America is literally on that trajectory of the downfall of an empire, right? They are following the steps almost by the book. So, at this point, I think let's just watch them burn and carry on with ourselves. And you touched on a point now when you were speaking with regards to the silent backers, right? And we talk about power, but much of it really doesn't sit with the leader or these figureheads. And you have to question, are they really in control, or do we underestimate these networks behind them, the financiers, the data engineers? And in the situation with regards to America, the technocrats, right? I know recently we saw these protests all across America, the No Kings protest, and the ICE raids have been if you really get into it, it is so abhorrent. It really makes you shiver. I would not manage living in a society like that. But then recently in San Francisco, I think it was very publicly, Trump said it himself. 2 of the CEOs from Silicon Valley made a call to Trump, and he pulled out the ICE raids from there. And it just really makes you question, if all it takes is a phone call from a certain individual, and yet we see chaos across the rest of America, then who is really in control?
Absolutely. I think this is it's a question we should be asking about all societies, not just American societies. There's so much that we don't know about what I call the silent levers of control, and who actually runs the country or the world, if you want to talk about it, Don't underestimate, of course, the money men, right? The financiers, the people who provide the material assets to win elections, because elections are expensive businesses, and then to remain in power. And of course, what they then expect in return in terms of tax cuts and other incentives that, for their businesses to run smoothly, among other incentives. So there's a lot of economic, political shenanigans going on, and it's a form of very high level corruption. And then, of course, don't underestimate the technocrats, as you said, the data engineers, the people who provide surveillance equipment for countries to surveil their own peoples, the people who provide military equipment and the militaries themselves and who they answer to. And last but not least, the people who control intelligence behind the scenes. So all of those come together to either make or break the kings, if you will, the people 100%. Who titularly, they are the titular holders of power. They the title holders, the place cards, if you will, of president, prime minister, or whatever the other head of state designation is. But the real power does not often lie in that person, but in a nexus and a network of businesses, intelligence operatives, military operatives, and technocrats of various types.
So well said. Look, we've got a few minutes left, and I just want to round off with a somewhat pragmatic question. Look, this new face of dictatorship is not something that is a theory or a fringe conspiracy, but the subtle populist rhetoric is, it's been sanitized and pushed, and it is really exponentially increasing. I mean, it begs the question, what does resistance really look like now, and what sort of lessons should we as South Africans draw before we find ourselves rehearsing the same sort of situation?
Yes, absolutely. It's a great question, particularly given where South Africa has been, where it's come to, and in what ways our own government has failed us as citizens, and what civic activism should look like. For the last 2 decades, ever since the so-called Arab Spring, we've seen a lot of armchair activism, a lot of armchair resistance, which is not necessarily a bad thing, on social media, on alternative media, and generally on various, online platforms of various sorts. The exponential explosion, if you will, of making audio-visual media available to the citizen in the street in the palm of his or her hand has had a very profound effect on both our politics and our activism. But it's also had the effect of making many people, particularly younger people, believe that that kind of what I call armchair activism from perhaps the comfort of your own home or own business, is sufficient. And here is where I must really, put up a red flag and say, no, it's not. We need a new form of civic education that really focuses in on why civic activism is so important, why it's important not just to resist and protest when our governments or our business leaders or our celebrities or whoever we revere in one form or another disappoint us, but also why it's important to mobilize within communities, to have community spaces where on the ground voices can be heard and amplified and basically taken up to the various levels of government, starting at local government level and up to and including not only national government, but international government, like interstate government. And I think that really starts with people on the ground. I know from my own experience as an anti-apartheid activist and a pro-Palestine activist that starts on the ground with communities. But many of our young people have not been educated enough in how to do that kind of activism, or are not interested enough, because it's easier to just share and like and press a button and feel good about yourself for being an activist. And I'm not slamming that kind of activism, but I'm saying it needs to go hand in hand with practical on-the-ground community mobilization and activism. And we are losing that. And it is particularly concerning now that so many of the social media platforms that we use for our armchair activism are being bought over by the right wing, by pro-Zionist organizations, etc. And so the algorithm won't amplify our voices. And we need to find other alternative means of amplifying our voices, both on the ground and in the virtual spaces.
That is so well said. I think you just hit the nail on the head. I did an interview yesterday where I made the argument that we've become so comfortable and we feel almost we feel justified by liking and sharing and maybe protesting, but not making any real change. And it begs the question whether this level of comfort and performative acting has become a new form of complicity, right? But look, that is our conversation and our time. Jazakallah so much for joining us, Aisha. As always, your insights are outstanding, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Jazakallah khair for having me on, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and your listeners, inshallah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, that is the conversation today, and I think it reminded us that crisis, whether it's flowing through our taps or creeping through our politics, it really arrives suddenly, right? They build quietly through neglect, complacency, and then we believe that it's somebody else's job to fix it. I mean, from South Africa's collapsing water systems to the global return of strongman politics, the pattern is always the same. Instructions will crumble when accountability dries up. And once again, the public, you and I, are left to just deal with the fallout. So the question I'm going to leave you with is this. How much dysfunction are we willing to normalize before we call it betrayal and just decide to do something about it? I want to say a big thank you to Nhlanhla Sibisi for unpacking the water crisis and to Aisha Kaji for connecting the dots on the world's slow slide back into authoritarianism. And thank you, as always, to you, the listener, for tuning into the weekly debrief. Remember, you need to start questioning more. You need to demand better and never mistake silence for stability. But don't go anywhere. Stay with us. The Social Network is coming up now with Zahir Basa. Same station, same energy, just a different kind of conversation. And after 4, he's having a really great conversation with Khalid Mauda from the Social Intifada, who was there at Francesca Albanese's recent moving lecture. But that is it for me. From me, Muhammad Ayaz Kareem. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Are you ready for an unforgettable adventure in the heart of South Africa? Look no further than Quantu Private Game Reserve, introducing our exclusive South African special, a day visit for only 850 Rand per person, and children under 10 pay half price. Endure the ultimate safari experience with a 5-course meal, a thrilling game drive showcasing the Big Five, and a visit to our Predator Education and Rehabilitation Center. Plus, enjoy a hot snack and so much more. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to connect with nature and create lifelong memories. Book your day visit today by calling 081 434 8859. That's 081 434 8859. Quantu Private Game Reserve, where the wild heart of South Africa beats. Book now and experience the adventure of a lifetime.
Radio Al-Ansar. An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al-Ansar News.
Making news this hour, the 28th of October. The news from Durban 90.4 FM, Pietermaritzburg 105.6 FM. Union celebrates victory for workers. Ameri Kimonina. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa, NUMSA, has commended a Labour Court ruling as a significant victory for workers in northern KwaZulu-Natal. ArcelorMittal South Africa has been ordered to reinstate workers who were unfairly retrenched at its Newcastle plant and in Vereeniging. NUMSA took the steel company to court on urgent basis earlier this month, accusing it of ignoring consultation